You're listening to a 4x4 Radio Network podcast.
The Centresteer Podcast, a Land Rover podcast by Land Rover owners. Welcome to the Centresteer Podcast number 58 for January 2018, the Series 1 of Land Rover Podcasts. This is a podcast by, for, and about Land Rover owners. I'm your host, John Kosich, from the studio in Western Pennsylvania. Joining me via Skype today is Harold from the Keystone State. From the Green Mountain, From the Green Mountain State is Morgan of SeriesParts.com fame.
Hello.
And from the Palmetto State is Mike Carnell of JustBritish.com fame.
Good afternoon.
Our guests this month are Nigel Cass, who gives us a first-hand review of the Discovery 5 and the Land Rover experience up in Vermont, and Casey Deming of Griffin Pocket Tools. He'll talk about the Georgia Bushcraft gathering that's coming up this spring. Special thanks to our monthly Patreon subscribers. Your support really does help, especially with the domain management and the website hosting. Visit patreon.com/Centresteer for all the details. And thanks for your comments, likes, follows on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, and email. We really appreciate it. Are you keeping up with the bells? They wrote about their journey through North America and the beginning of Mufta's. Did I say that right? Is it Mufta's? Mafuta's rebuild of for their next continental journey in La Lucha. And we were excited to have been mentioned in the book more than once and have an entire chapter, number 21, referencing our corner of the planet. Graham, I am personally offering to be your editor, though, for the next book for free. Just a little hint. Though I did particularly enjoy reading about their time in Baja, Mexico. Anybody else read the book yet?
I'm working on it.
If you haven't already gotten a copy of the book, I highly recommend it. It helps the bells, too, as they travel the planet. You want to visit a2aexpedition.com to buy the book. You can also buy all three if you don't already own all three books.
Yeah, buy a book because that'll get them a tank of fuel to get on to the next town.
That's right. I think they're currently in Greece, aren't they? The last I saw, they're hanging out in Greece. I kind of enjoy now following them as they are going around different places, and then you go back and when you read the book, you get like some of the details about where they are when they're there. Does that make some sense?
Kind of get the story behind the story?
Yes. The third episode of the Green Oval Podcast is out. Podcast. Subscribe to the show. You'll get the reference.
Oh, that's Freudian.
No, I got the reference.
Thanks for the kind words, Simon. I'm glad you got that, Mike. Simon, come back on the show soon, please, and explain how the Land Rover waving rules are different in the UK. I don't know. Did you notice that, Mike? The way they
I did.
Yeah.
I was interested in that because as a Discovery 2 owner, nobody waves at me.
Well, they should. See, that's the thing is here in the U.S., I think all Land Rover owners should wave at all other Land Rover owners. It seems in the U.K. it's certain there's a different levels, depending on what you own.
I've discovered that LR 3 and 4 owners will sometimes wave at me, but Series and Defenders won't. And Range Rover owners don't pay attention to anybody.
Oh, no,
so
of course not.
No.
That is very true.
No, that's true.
Right, because their nose is up in the air, so they can't see much past it.
Exactly.
Well,
and many of them don't realize that their vehicle is a Land Rover produced vehicle.
You've hit the nail on the head.
They have no idea that it's British or anything else.
And I think a lot of it also has to do with, what their entry point into the experience is. Like you talk about the LR3 and 4 owners, maybe that was their first one and they don't get the reference to the earlier discos and or the proper Land Rovers because they don't make that connection.
Yeah, I was actually stopped in traffic by an LR3 owner who loved my Discovery 2. And so he was an LR3 owner aspiring to have a Discovery 2, and I thought that was interesting.
Oh, that sounds right to me.
Yeah.
I also like how Simon started off his show in the Grand Tour style. Did you notice that, Mike?
Yeah, I did.
That's cool.
His shows are getting better with each one.
Yeah, absolutely.
And I really do enjoy them.
That's how it works in this business.
Well, let's get on with the news. So JLR sales for the U.S. in 2017 set a record. For the full year, JLR sold 114,333 units. That is up 9%. Compared to 2016, it is a new all-time U.S. sales record for the combined brands. Specifically for Land Rover, they sold almost 75,000 units here, which is a slight increase of 1%. The Range Rover achieved impressive double-digit growth annually, so says justbritish.com, selling almost 17,000 units for the full calendar year. Jaguar did very, very well. They had a 27% increase, mainly because of the F-Pace and I think the XE. The Range Rover Velar sold almost 1,700 units in December alone. Of course, I think it just came out recently. The diesel-powered versions of the Range Rover Sport, Range Rover Velar, and Discovery, note, not the Discovery Sport, continue to play an important role with a 14% take rate.
Well, that's certainly good news for the new Discovery and for the new Range Rover, the Velar.
Yes, not the two-door Range Rover. We'll talk about that later. So I actually have a correction. I did a little research, guys. I know it shocks everybody before the show. U.S. auto manufacturer market share for 2017. At the top, and I guess I really have a correction because I've always said and heard that Land Rover had a 1% of the American market. That's not true. The correction is 0.5. They have a 0.5 year-to-date. No, 0.4. I was looking at December alone. They have a 0.4 market share year-to-date for 2017. Jaguar. Anybody want to guess what Jaguar's market share is for the U.S.?
It's a smaller number than that, I believe.
It is 0.2%. 0.2%.
Right, well.
At the top is General Motors. They have 17.4%. Ford is at almost 15%. Chrysler, which would include Jeep, has 11.7%. Toyota, 14.1%. American Honda is 9.5%. Nissan, 9.2%. Hyundai, 4%. Mazda, 1.7%. Mitsubishi, 0.6%. Kia, 3.4%. Subaru, 3.8%. Mercedes, 2.2%. Volkswagen, 2.0%. Audi, 1.3%. BMW, 1.8%. Porsche, 0.3%. Tesla, 0.3%. Then Jag, Land Rover, Alfa Romeo, Mini, Smart, Ferrari, Maserati, Bentley, Lamborghini, Rolls-Royce all round out the bottom of that.
So where is Lada on that list?
I don't think Lada is available in the U.S., is it?
Not legally.
No. Yes, this is just
so according to that list, now tell me if I was paying attention correctly, Tesla has the same or higher than Jaguar?
It
would seem that way.
It seemed like it was 0.1% higher or so.
That's interesting.
Jaguar for the year 2017 year to date 0.2, Tesla 0.3, Land Rover 0.4. Now let's look at sales. Let me see if I get the right year to date sales. In 2016, Tesla sold almost 40,000 units. In 2017, Tesla sold almost 41,000 units. Jaguar sold, I guess maybe we'll just stick with 2017. So for 2017, Tesla sold 43,800 units. Jaguar sold 39,600 units. And
it makes sense, though. It's home market for Tesla.
And Land Rover sold 74,700 units.
Tesla also has the gimmick factor of it being the electric vehicle that's helping them.
We'll talk about this soon, but most of the other manufacturers, including Jaguar, are coming out with electric-only options for their vehicles.
Well, you're right, but at the moment, Tesla is leading that market. So, I mean, if you're looking for an electric vehicle, your options are somewhat limited at this point, and so Tesla gets an advantage there. So, in that sense, it's kind of not apples to apples, lumping Tesla versus Jag.
That's not actually completely true. The Chevy Bolt is selling very well and better, and the Nissan Leaf, I believe, is selling better than anything that Tesla has.
And that comes down to price point. Tesla is very much a luxury brand like Jaguar. I think the other thing that sets Tesla apart is the brand recognition there, because clearly they are solely electric, whereas all the other brands, Chevy, Nissan, Jaguar, they're introducing particular models that are electric. So that's much a smaller percentage of the brand awareness. Also, Tesla was pretty much the first manufacturer to go really with a modern production electric vehicle and launch with it. at saying they were going to be solely electric. So I think there's a lot more brand awareness there as well, because it was so risky. A lot of people thought they weren't going to do well. It was in the news a lot. Then they took off, and now everybody else is catching up, right?
The interesting thing is that they're the only manufacturer in the automotive industry that has never made an internal combustion engine powered vehicle.
Exactly. And have no intention to.
Right.
Ever.
All right, let's look at worldwide JLR sales. JLR worldwide sold 621,000 vehicles. That's a 7% increase over 2016. And just a little bit of comparison, General Motors in the United States, anybody guess how many vehicles General Motors or Ford or Chrysler sold in the U.S.?
Too many.
Come on, I need a number. No one?
We should be able to do a little math in our head to,
all right. General Motors sold in 2017 nearly 3 million vehicles. Ford 2.5 and Chrysler 2.0 million vehicles. And that's just in the U.S. And JLR worldwide sold 621,000 units. However, there are problems. They had in the home market in the UK, they did have some problems there towards the end of the year selling vehicles, and which actually impacted the Velar, and we'll get to that in a moment. But it comes down to two reasons. One, there is some consumer confidence issues around Brexit, and there is a higher tax on diesels that will affect 90% of JLR vehicles sold in the UK. They'll basically become more expensive, and so that has caused a negative impact on sales in the UK for JLR.
Okay.
That makes sense.
Yeah.
Yep. And actually, as I mentioned, it affected the Velar, and that kind of surprised Land Rover. They thought that the Velar would sell much, much better than it did. And let's see here. I was looking at this article. They started at £44,000, some costing as much as £85,000. So things didn't sell. They think partially because of these issues that we just mentioned, not necessarily the diesel thing, but I think because of just the consumer confidence issue.
Right, and when you have consumer confidence problems, that's kind of like a risky time to launch a new model.
Yeah, or pin your hopes that it's just going to sell just because everyone's excited by it. I mean,
right.
They pretty much said, oh, here it is, you're going to buy it, right? So this article says...
It's appealing, you'll like it.
So far, around 1 in 5 Velar sales have been to Range Rover Evoque customers trading up. Did I say it right? Is it Evoque or Evoque? I always remind you.
It's Evoque.
Evoque, thank you.
Now, that's actually an impressive stat there, to have 20% of it being upgrade sales from the Evoque.
Very few.
Because that is their sort of, not quite, a freebie, but it's their cheapest, smallest model, trying exactly to hook the sort of younger urban crowd on the Land Rover brand.
Get them onto
it's doing what it's intended to do.
Yep.
Very few Range Rover Sport customers traded down, but by far the biggest percentage of Velar sales are being made to new Land Rover customers, period. And it's now possible to secure dealer discounts of up to £2,000 on the car. So if you're in the UK, now's a good time to buy a Velar, apparently. So next up, the Jaguar iPace. Morgan, you want to talk about this?
Yeah, it's just interesting to see basically the iPace. It's been shown off at some of the auto shows, and there was a video on YouTube from, trying to look at the list here. I'll probably restart this.
Fully charged show.
Yes, fully charged. Thank you. The iPace is Jaguar's, entry into fully electric vehicles, and they've shown off the design concepts at various auto trade shows, and it's currently in pre-production testing. We've seen, a number of spy shots of it and such, but a YouTube car channel was able to go out and actually get a test ride. They didn't get to drive it in the pre-production iPace in its camo around LA, and got to see some of the features, how it feels when it's riding. So it's interesting from that.
And that's a 100% electric, right? That's not a hybrid. It's a 100%. It's just like a Tesla.
Correct. Yeah, that's the first vehicle that JLR is doing 100% electric. So that's sort of why it's interesting.
And Robert
they got
is
to
that
really feel that.
Robert is the actor from the UK or comedian from the UK, right?
Correct.
I forget his last name. Yeah. Okay. I see his picture. Remember it now.
Yep. So yeah, it was also interesting to me to see them do test rides in a pre-production model, because generally they don't do that. So it had the Suburban camo on the outside, and then on the inside they still had most of the interior covered up with mats and such to disguise what it would look like.
And again, I'd like to buy it that way.
Yeah, right.
I like that rubber mat stuff in the
Herald
inside.
edition.
Yeah, it kind of looked like a flocked dash, so it's kind of nice look.
And I love development camo. I think just getting a wrap like that, and if you can get that as an interior option, that'd be awesome.
This is a new urban wrap camo that you've never seen before, Harold. This has lots of like stripes through it. It's gray with was that kind of like an aqua striping through it?
So you have a totally silent electric vehicle in camo to stay hidden. Yeah, okay.
See, camo isn't to stay hidden. Camo is just to confuse the enemy.
Which would be the same as being silent, too. Yeah. I'm not sure we want Harold to have that.
Yeah, well, no.
Well, the meat wagon is already camo, so, but it's far from silent.
It's not, actually. It's not camo. No, it is NATO green.
Gotcha.
And in its history, it never had been camo.
Nice.
No, my 109 is camo. It's NATO green and was that NATO black? I don't know, whatever that is.
Well, it's just black. Just black.
Just black.
Black, NATO green, and bare metal are the three colors.
And
interesting.
Yes, and
anyway, back to the iPace very quickly. You mentioned the sound or the noise level that the iPace produces, and one of the things they actually discussed was trying to ensure through their tuning that there was a reasonable amount of electric engine sound in the cabin for the driver to hear, so that they could have the experience of actually driving a vehicle, hear what it was doing, have a little of that auditory feedback.
And Jag is good at that, actually. They've been doing that for years.
Everybody does it.
Well, but yeah, the case in point, the XJs and the XKs when they came out from about the mid 90s on, the body control computer does the flash rate on all the turn signals, but that makes them silent. You don't hear the click of the mechanical flasher. So they put a speaker in the steering column and computer generate a clicking noise.
And Ford pumps engine sounds into the F-150 because they had done such a good job on that one, making it comfortable that you could hear the engine. So they add through the stereo engine sounds on the F-150.
Yeah, and there's a few electric vehicle manufacturers who have tried that in the past as well to make it sound a little familiar. But very nice to see that, for a company that prides themselves in having a sporty driver's car, that they're making sure that comes through on the electric side of it as well. Yeah, it was an interesting little video. It'll be interesting to see how it's accepted once it's launched, being the first all-electric JLR vehicle.
Very cool. Is there a Land Rover version of that? Is the iPace, do we know if it's that's the basis of a frame for a Land Rover?
I haven't even really looked enough to see how the iPace compares with, say, the F-Pace, because the F-Pace is on the same platform as the Velar and presumably some other upcoming Land Rover vehicles.
I think it's Velar and Discovery, isn't it? Both of those?
Yeah, I think the Discovery... maybe the Discovery 5 is on that too.
I'm just curious. I hadn't seen. I've done a little bit of looking at the iPace, but I don't recall it. It sounded like it was a new frame. Although it would make sense that it might be based off of the Disco Sport Evoque.
It does make sense.
I think it's smaller than that, though.
I think it is a little smaller, and generally, when you're designing an electric vehicle, you don't have a lot of the same requirements for a traditional drivetrain, and you have new requirements in terms of battery placement and such. So generally companies do try to to develop a fairly different frame.
We could make people's heads spin around by suggesting it'll be the new Defender.
I was just going to say, as long as they don't do that, I'm fine with whatever they do.
You never know.
It looked fast, but it doesn't have much clearance.
Moving on in the Land Rover world, the Discovery has gone commercial. There is a disco van, I guess. The commercial, is officially known, is basically a rear seat delete package. The front cabin remains essentially the same as in the normal Discovery, but right behind the front seats is a partition cage. The second and third rows have been removed, opening up a useful cargo area in the back. The load area is 64.4 inches long, 37 inches high, 55.6 inches wide. Unlike many cargo vehicles, which replace rear windows with metal panels, the Discovery keeps its windows but features privacy glass.
Does it retain the rear doors as well?
Yes, correct. Same door. The overhead door, correct.
But I mean, the rear passenger doors, are those still present?
They look like they're there. At least in the photo that I see here, looks like there's handles. I can see some handles.
The question is whether they work or not.
Right. Yeah, they are. They're still there. They're intact.
Interesting.
It comes with a choice of 2 diesel powertrains. You can order it in the SSE or HSE versions. All the usual things apply. In the UK, the Discovery commercial starts at the equivalent of about $76,000 US for the 2-liter, or $78,500 for the 3-liter. And guess what? In the US, it is unavailable.
As usual.
Exactly.
Yeah, that's a shame. I hope it eventually can make it to the U.S. market. There are certain brands, well, obviously Mercedes is one of them who is doing very well with their four-wheel drive vans in the U.S.
It doesn't fit the Land Rover Premium in view in the U.S.
The thing of it is really no body mods involved in this. All I did is put a blackout panel on the inside of the windows and unbolt the seat. Anybody wants a new Disco and wants that version, just bring it to me. I can make that happen in a couple days. I mean, that's not a big deal.
Sounds like
removing the seats is nothing in those.
They probably get a dog cage and put it up there behind the seats.
That's an easy fabrication. That's not a big deal at all.
The 2019 Range Rover Evoque steps out in hybrid guise. So as we know, the version 2 of the Evoque is coming. It is codenamed, if anybody's curious, L551. And it will offer hybrid engine options. It has been mentioned before. And the one that was in Car Magazine said it had been freshly registered in December 2017 as a 2-liter petrol-electric hybrid. And that's that Ingenium engine. So there's some pictures if you're interested to see what it looks like. I have difficulty telling that it's a new one, but then again, it could be how they taped it off, and it looks the same proportions. It's got the sloping rear roof line, so there you go. I think you know what it looks like, and I can't really tell much difference.
Given that Jerry drew the lines on it, I already know what it looks like without seeing a picture.
And my guess is, like most new revamps, that it's not a significant change. They clearly put all that effort into the Velar and some of the other upcoming vehicles like the Defender. So it seems more like a minor style change, but mostly probably a drivetrain and feature bump, which, hybrid electric is a welcome addition to Land Rover vehicles.
And it was a very successful vehicle to begin with, so they're not monkeying with it, sounds like.
Yeah.
Moving on in the Range Rover line, there's a 2-door Range Rover Coupe prototype has been spotted. This is not a Velar. This is a 2-door Range Rover, just like the original Range Rover was, in fact, a 2-door. So
I was going to say, that's nothing new. They did it in 1970.
No, it's new for McGovern.
Well, okay. It's Jerry admitting that something was done right before.
So there's a...
Is this going to be the Sport?
No. This is not the Sport. No. This is not a Velar. It's not a Sport. It's a Range Rover 2. I don't think it has a name yet. I think it's still I don't know that it's actually going to happen from what I read, but it's, how McGovern has said, there's niches in the market. We want to fill them. I think he sees a niche in the market and they want to try to fill it. Moving off of new vehicles, Land Rover here in the U.S. at their Heritage Experience has added Defender. They now have, it looks like they've bought some North American spec NAS Defenders and added them to the experience lineup throughout North America. That's in Asheville, North Carolina, Carmel, California, Manchester, Vermont, and Montebello, Quebec. And you can now go drive a Defender at one of those locations, in addition to driving a Discovery Sport, Evoque, Range Rover Sport, or Velar. All for the wonderful price of, as I try to scan through the article here, and it's special. It's not just the Land Rover experience, it's the Defender experience. For half day, it's $1,200 American. For the full day, it's $1,500 American.
So that second 4 hours is a real bargain.
Yes.
Yeah, it is.
Can you buy that second 4 hours just by itself?
Yeah. Let me have the second half of somebody else's day.
Exactly.
How this came about was really interesting. Kim McCullough, who is the JLR Vice President of Marketing for North America, she tracked them down, thought they should be added in anticipation of the 70th anniversary of Land Rover, and created the Defender experience. And also, I think probably to help start hyping the new Defender that's going to come out. So that was cool. At least it was sounds like an organically grown thing. Like it was a neat idea, I think.
Very cool. That's, like the Land Rover experience. Well, not the Land Rover experience, but the production line tour that they were doing in the UK. Same kind of organically grown feature. So that's good. Actually, before we move on, I just want to put out an offer that, if anybody wants to fly into Burlington International Airport, I will happily drive you down to Manchester, Vermont, for a ride along on the Defender experience.
Now, would they need to buy you a half day or a full day to qualify for this free ride?
I would suggest for them that it's a much better deal to do the full day.
Because then you'll drive them back, right?
Yeah.
So if they do half day, you only drive them one way.
Purchase a half day, you'll take them down. Full day, we'll bring them back.
Yes.
If you want to stay in Manchester for a while and you want the ride back, you're going to have to put me up at the Equinox for a while too. So, just throw that out there. The Equinox is the resort that Land Rover Experience operates out of.
Let's talk about the 400 brake horsepower Gorilla. So Land Rover has revealed that they're going to come out with a Defender Works V8. This will be the fastest and most powerful Defender ever of its kind. Ever. So Defender,
ever to leave the factory, perhaps, but...
Defender Works V8, built as a limited run special edition that both pays homage to the early V8 performance Defenders and to Land Rover Mark's 70th anniversary. Defender Works V8 power plant, a 5-liter naturally aspirated unit with 400 brake horsepower, 300 pound-feet of torque, which, like here they say here.
Actually, I believe that number is 405.
And I like here in the article, it says an ethereal cry from their regular Defenders, 120 brake horsepower. It's supposed to go from 0 to 60 in 5.6 seconds and top out at 106 miles per hour. It will be attached to an 8-speed ZF automatic box with a sport mode. Bigger brakes, better springs, dampeners, and anti-roll bars, 18-inch alloy and all-terrain tires. It will be sandwiched into 150 specially selected, I used air quotes because they quoted in the article from Top Gear, re-engineered Defender chassis, available in either 90 or 110 variants. You can choose from 8 body colors as long as the roof is black. And you get machined aluminum handles, fuel cap, and Defender lettering on the bonnet. They start at a whopping £150,000 for the 90.
Well, but that's not entirely a bad price. And you got to keep in mind that these are not new Defenders. These are restored, used Defenders. So now Land Rover is in the resto mod business at their classic works, which is kind of a cool new thing. But the price, if you're going to go out and get somebody in this country to restore one and to do that level of upfitting, you're going to spend that much money.
Very true.
And this gives you the cachet of having it done at the factory, so to speak.
Which V8 are they using in it? Did I miss that?
It's the 5-liter Jag.
Okay. Well, and that's
and
petrol.
The presumption is that the transmission is also out of the Jag. They just moved the whole power plant over.
Right.
Yeah, looking at the Land Rover media site that has specific details, this says 405, as Harold mentioned, at 6,000 RPM, but that's power PS. What's is that
PS is just one of the measurement standards, let's say.
Does that equal, is that 1-to-1 on brake horsepower? Could that be why it's 400 brake horsepower?
It's a measurement method. It's to distinguish itself from the DIN standard, for instance.
Okay. All right. And this is on the Land Rover media site. 8-speed automatic with pistol shifter, all-wheel drive, 2-speed transfer box, heavy-duty front and rear differentials, torque biasing, center differential, fuel economy, top speed. Well, they don't give you the economy. It just says
if you have to ask.
Yeah. You don't. Yeah. Defender Works V8. The Defender Works V8 is available in the United Kingdom and MENA markets on a personal import basis. European market availability is also on an individual import basis, subject to rules on importation of vehicle conversions.
Translation: you can't have them here in the U.S.
Yeah, because the interesting thing is, since it's not technically a new vehicle, are they giving them a new number, or are they, actually an older one, so that if you could bring it into the U.S. if they used an older spec, or are they re-IDing them?
The problem is, even if it was old enough to meet the 25-year rule, it's got that brand spanking new V8 installed in it, and customs will never let it in.
Unless it was shipped over as a kit. Not that I'm saying anybody would do that.
Well, I mean, we can build those here,
Yeah.
We can build a clone of that.
Yeah, so
I'd be all down on that.
Yeah, we just need the badges.
Yeah. Or make our own badges. We don't need no stinking badges.
There you go. Thank you.
I liked how someone on Twitter was commenting on the Defender Works V8, and they said, it'll still leak. and of course,
but who cares?
And then I said, well, you're still your elbow's still gonna hit the window. So yeah, it's just.
But this one might actually go fast.
I wonder how I meant to look this up. How's it compared to the Bowler that was done a couple years ago? Because the Bowler is that similar to anybody know offhand?
Bowlers have been around a lot more, and they go fast and they do a lot of stuff. But those are race trucks. They're not really streetable. They're hard to drive in town. And this is a real. And Bowlers really actually suck in the off road too, on the rocks and in the woods.
All right, moving on to the new Defender is edging closer to production as cold weather testing commences. So Land Rover has moved the Defender into cold weather testing ahead of the car's sales launch next year. The short wheelbase 90 badged model spotted testing under the body of a heavily modified Range Rover Sport. Of course, they've just further that's pretty much it. There's just stuff we've heard before, but I'll recap a little bit. Apparently there'll be a 90 and a 110 inch models. The wheelbase will house both hard and soft top body styles. Eventual series of Defender models will potentially include a pickup and a lineup of different versions and trims, ranging from the more civilized everyday use to most hardcore. Autocar, we're reading this article from, can now reveal the new Defender, codenamed, anybody interested in the code name for the new Defender? L663, will finally be shown towards the end.
Oh, short by 3.
Well played, sir. L663 will finally be shown towards the end of the year as the centerpiece of Land Rover's 70th anniversary celebrations. And I like this part. And the model revealed will be the final production car, not a concept. Suck it up, Buttercup. Developing the car's complex business case. This was a new bit. This is coming out of, they then discuss about the DC-100 concept, but then it says why there's been a delay because the DC-100 was not well received. Then they said developing the car's complex business case was another reason for the delay. Sales of the old Defender never rose above 20,000 units per annum in later years, and as many as 100,000 annual sales are needed to make it viable this time around, leading to the decision to offer multiple body styles. I think it was a new bit of info I don't recall hearing.
Which is really precisely what makes a Defender in the first place, is the option for the multiple body styles. So that works for me.
Yeah, definitely. I'm actually very glad to hear that confirmed.
One question hanging over the new Defender is where it will be produced. It is unlikely to be built in Britain because the two JLR factories that make aluminum-bodied cars at Solihull and Castle Bromwich are closed to capacity. That leaves the firm's new plant in Slovakia, where the Discovery, to which the new Defender will closely be related, will be built. So that looks like Slovakia is the most appropriate location.
Well, as long as we can get it to the U.S.,
that is their...
the location it's being built matters slightly less to me.
Yes, that is their... That's what we've been told. It's going to be a worldwide car.
Well, on the other hand, Pennsylvania has historically been really good about offering tax incentives to companies that want to build new car factories here.
And they do need to move into the U.S. market to increase their U.S., to avoid some of the taxes and, increase their production rate here.
And there's also some speculation that there may be an electric Defender that would be all electric. Sources close to JLR told Motor Authority that a battery electric Defender is confirmed for production, that the SUV will utilize at least one electric motor with a powerful battery pack. When pressed for information on an electrified Defender this past October, Chris Marchand, who's the executive vice president for JLR North America, told MA, Motor Authority, electrified powertrains and off-roaders are not mutually exclusive, seemingly dropping a hint before the new report. Sources added the platform will indeed be closely related to the Discovery's platform, which we just heard about a moment ago. So there is a possibility then for an all-electric Defender.
Not surprising.
And of course, I remind everybody, as we've been tracking this, Britain is one of the countries that wants to stop selling internal combustion engines in, 2020 or 2025? So they kind of have to.
Right, and especially all their models will have it. So
right, they've said that. Plus, if they want this new platform to last, which is part of the Defender DNA, is to have long longevity, they need to be thinking about this stuff. Non-specific Land Rover news, but these are related to Land Rover, and of course related. I think they inform some of the new Defender. Mercedes G-Class off-road adds swagger to the trail. So Mercedes just unveiled a new version of its Unitarian rugged luxury SUV as part of the North American Auto Show. Taking aim at Land Rover, the new G-Wagon, its hip name, which I just assumed was always the name, G-Wagon. It's always been the name.
Yes. Keeps its military bearing and off-road capability while adding to its luxury appointments. The ground clearance alone, critical to negotiating trails, was increased to 9.5 inches. It gets new suspension, LED headlights, advanced driver assist systems, and a high interior with leather seats. And at the time when many automakers are ditching their V8s in favor of more fuel-efficient 4s and 6s, the G550 sticks tradition. It's powered by a biturbo 4-liter V8, good for 416 horsepower, with
right on,
and a 9-speed automatic transmission. So the thing I think about when the G-Wagon is, and Mercedes does this that Land Rover can't, is Mercedes has the luxury of doing this. They've got a lot of cash, a lot of money, and they've got a lot of runway space that they can do this. They can have an old version of a vehicle and just kind of update it and keep it and make appointments to it. They put a roll cage on it on the exterior, just like Land Rover did back in the 90s for the Defender. I just find it interesting. People are like, oh, why can't Land Rover do that? Because Land Rover doesn't have as much money. They don't have as much capacity, whereas Mercedes does.
Well, and also you think that the Defender was expensive at the end of its production line. The G-Wagon is far more expensive.
Especially the way the Germans do everything.
Yeah, and that's why they're still happy to sell them with a V8, because when you've spent the money for a G-Wagon, it really doesn't matter how much fuel you're putting into it.
No. The 2018 Ford F-150 is going to have a diesel in it that will offer 30 miles per gallon and 440 pound-feet of torque. So again, at the Detroit Auto Show, the International Auto Show, Ford announced that it would offer a 3-liter V6 diesel in the 2018 F-150. It will be the smallest power stroke motor with 250 horsepower, 440 pound-feet of torque, and an estimated 40 miles per gallon on a highway, and 11,400 pounds of towing capacity.
Well, it's nice to see that they're investing in smaller diesels, and it's you don't have to get a Super Duty to get a diesel.
Yeah, definitely.
I mean, I like having a big truck. I like 3/4 ton and up. That's my thing because it suits what I need to do with a truck. My trucks have to do important things. But for those who are weekend casual truck users, they still want to have a diesel, but they don't need a bigger truck. This is kind of an opportunity.
And important to us, or relevant to us, the engine is an updated version of the 3-liter turbo diesel V6 offered in various JLR products, first offered when Ford owned the Land Rover. While the output is similar to the V8 diesel available in some Land Rovers, it has been optimized for their use.
Cool.
Interesting.
Finally in the news, Series 1. This is Series 1 news. Land Rover has found a Series 1 in someone's garden near Birmingham and is going to restore it. So 3 pre-production prototype examples of the newfangled Land Rover, quote-unquote, graced the Geneva Auto Show, heralding Britain's take on the idea that created America, came out of the American Willys Jeep. And this was back in, 1948. They had a long history, this truck. It was eventually rebadged and given a number plate. The dilapidated rust bucket in the gallery of pictures they have here is indeed one of the original show cars. Originally built in 1948 with left-hand drive as an engineering prototype, it was converted to right-hand drive and upgraded with production engine parts later that year. It is now registered as SNX 910, and they found it in a garden, and I thought I highlighted that information, but I did not. But they found it. It bounced around the UK, and I think it left the UK and came back. You can look at the show notes, and on Top Gear has an article on it and get all the details. But they're going to restore this now in anticipation of the 70th anniversary.
Are they going to put it back to left-hand drive?
It doesn't say that. It says JLR's Classic Works will now embark on a year-long restoration of the 1948 veteran. And in a tribute to the car's pottered history, because it was found in a garden, Land Rover's confirmed the patina of those well-worn panels will be preserved. That's all they say.
So maybe they're going to choose a point in time and restore it to its right-hand configuration. As a pre-production prototype, though, isn't this their first attempt at a left-hand drive Land Rover?
Oh, I'm sure it was.
Yeah. Maybe they don't even know, Harold. They may not even know.
I'll have to look back at the pictures from the Geneva Auto Show. I don't remember whether it was left-hand drive at the show or not.
Well, we know it wasn't a Centresteer.
No, it was definitely not the Centresteer.
Sorry.
Well, I think it would have been the Centresteer and then these 3 prototypes after that. So it's, yeah.
Yeah, and I can't remember. Were there 3 at the Geneva show or only the 2?
No. I believe I think I read there were 3 that went to Geneva. I seem to recall that, and they mentioned 3 here as 3 pre-production prototypes. I believe all 3 went there.
There were 3 in Geneva, and I think it was left-hand drive when it was in Geneva.
Huh? Wow,
that's a good question.
Yeah, hopefully,
I don't know what they'll
hopefully
do.
They'll put it back to left-hand drive. But
I tend to think
because that's a significant milestone if that's the first time they tried to make one that way.
Well, it was the first one they made. I mean, they were the first ones. Period.
Well, but if that's the first prototype that they made left-hand drive, that's the first attempt at that engineering.
I suspect that if they're going to leave the patina of the vehicle as it is now, they will probably leave it in its current right-hand drive configuration.
I would think, yeah. Normally, when you restore something, you pick a point in its lifespan, and you build to that point.
And considering that it was converted after production to right-hand drive, like the rest of production,
right?
It's going to be far easier for them to find and restore parts for right-hand drive.
Right.
Yes. But
yeah, they're saying
Land
that
Rover.
they're going to put the paint on that was applied later. They're going to. It was obviously in the Geneva show in one configuration, and later it's green paint was applied, and that's what they're going to stick with. So it sounds more like they'd stick with that right-hand drive.
Okay.
Well, I guess we'll find out towards the end of the year. And I did find here, it was found 6 miles away from the factory, which is kind of funny.
Neat.
It had gone different places. In 55, here, I guess I'll read more. 55, Land Rover was done with the car, sold it off. In 55, this very car hit the roads of England wearing registration SNX 910. Between 55 and 68, it changed owners 5 times before winding up in a Welsh farmyard as a static generator. Consigned to a life away from open road, the car's engine soldiered on until 1988, when it seized. The broken Landy was punted to a new owner in Birmingham. Apparently, the owner stored it outdoors in anticipation of restarting a restoration project that never happened. Surprise. And there the car remained until it was spotted and repatriated to the factory it was built in, just 6 miles or so away from the garden resting place. So
after a lifetime of doing important things.
Exactly.
People. Thank you, Harold. Well done. Well done. All right, that's the news for January 2018. Welcome back to the Centresteer Podcast Show, number 58 for January 2018. And now joining us on the show is Nigel Cass. Nigel is a civilian. He is a friend of ours here in the Pittsburgh area, and you will immediately detect he is not originally from Pittsburgh. But Nigel owns a Discovery 2. He drives a Discovery 4, and he recently got to drive a Discovery 5. And that's why we're having him on the show, because we want to hear about someone who actually got to drive Discovery 5. Welcome to the show, Nigel.
Thank you kindly, sir. How are you?
Doing very well. So where are you from, by the way? We should have asked that.
Well, New Jersey. No, just joking. Originally...
which exit?
No, I'm originally from... I was born in Ascot, England, but I lived in London and I lived in Essex. But I'm fully emigrated over here to the United States.
Oh, so you're an actual citizen now.
No. I'm a legal resident.
Oh, okay. Oh, you didn't.
You got a green card.
Yes, the permanent one, the one that never goes away.
Oh, good.
Right on. But you retain your British citizenship.
That is true. And the reason being is that American girls don't believe you're British unless you can come up with the passport. So I just have to hold on to that.
They think you're faking the accent?
Absolutely, wouldn't you?
Not as effectively.
It's a lifetime to develop the accent, I believe. So, Nigel...
5 minutes to learn, a lifetime to master, just like golf.
Exactly.
So, Nigel, you got to drive a D5, but the interesting thing is where you did it. You went to Vermont and went to the Land Rover experience there. So how did you get to the experience, and can you tell us about the experience itself?
Yeah, absolutely. It's actually an interesting story. So I had my my LR4, the Discovery 4, and it was at the local dealership for a bit of servicing, and they you know what this is.
Yeah, I knew only because I know a little bit about this why that happened. You were not happy.
But what happened was, they were doing some work, and it took a little bit longer than it should have. And to their credit, they addressed it. They were right up front about it. But I was finally going to get the car back, and I was about to leave work to go and pick it up. And the phone rang, and the service manager said, I'm really sorry, but we put it through a car wash, and a bit of trim fell off. So I was very nice about it. I chuckled and said, accidents happen. When can I have it back? And he said, well, they're going to ship me out to new parts. It'll be here tomorrow. We'll put it on. You'll have it by the end of the day.
I'm sorry, but that just puts a picture in my head of the Top Gear episode where Clarkson was driving the Rover SD1 and they put it through a car wash and the door fell off.
Well, it wasn't that bad. Bad. Here's where it really got bad. Next day, I called them up. I'm excited to go pick up the car. And they said, sorry, but they sent a bit of trim for a Range Rover Evoque. And it doesn't fit. I go, no, I wouldn't think that it would. So then they had to order the parts again. And then they sent the wrong part again. And this went on. But eventually they got it all back to me. And they were very, very generous about it. They brought me the car to my office. A couple of days later, it was very nice. But the service manager said that, I'd like to buy you a gift. Is there anywhere you like to eat locally and all this? And I said, no, what I'd really like to do is I'd like to do an experience drive. And it went
smart.
Very smart.
Very clever man, Nigel.
Yes. And I don't know if he was disappointed when I threw that out there or because he thought he was just going to have to buy me a dinner. But I said that's what I wanted. And to their credit, that's what they provided. And I could go to any one that I wanted, but I picked the one in Vermont because there was some skiing up there I wanted to do as well at Stratton. So I put it all into one big trip. So I go up there. It's a beautiful area. It's in Manchester, Vermont. Absolutely gorgeous area. The Land Rover Experience Center, they've got a building in the town, which is very good. It's got Land Rover written out front. It's very nice. And then they've got a garage at another location. And they've got all of the current vehicles. And they also have a North American spec Defender, which you can rent as well. Only in the summer, though. They don't let you drive that in the winter. I found that interesting.
What? Wait. We just talked a little bit earlier about that you could rent a Defender for $1,500 for the whole day, and you can't drive it in the wintertime?
No. And I got into this.
Come on.
They get tired of people complaining about the lack of heat or what? I mean, I can't think of any other good reason.
Well, It was one of those things, because I got into that with them. And the first thing that they said was, well, the modern cars are much more capable, so on and so forth, and that's fine. But what I really got the impression was it was a wear and tear and parts issue.
Mm.
Right.
Yeah.
It's not so much the capability of that truck. It's all the idiots on the road that are going to ram into it and break it.
Well, and I would also add the road salt situation that you really don't want to try to maintain a series or a Defender or anything like that that's seen too much road salt.
Well, but you're not going on regular
They don't
roads.
use salt up there, do they?
Oh, yes, they do.
Oh, yes. It was funny.
Really?
Everywhere I was
They get
up
snow
there,
up there or something?
Yes. And everywhere I was up there, there's Land Rovers everywhere. There's enthusiasts everywhere in this little town. And everywhere I met somebody and I was talking to them about the Range Rover or the Discovery, whatever they had, and they all said that they put Waxall on them. It was a must up there because of all the road salt. But anyways, moving on. So I chose to drive the new Discovery 5 because, frankly, it was the closest thing to my LR4, and I wanted the training. I wanted to learn how to drive it. So it had the 3-liter supercharged V6 petrol engine, 8-speed automatic gearbox, high, low range, terrain response, hill descent control, all of that. He'd actually just got it, the instructor, because the weekend after I was there, they had a bunch of executives coming over from England at Land Rover to sort of inspect them on their program and what they were doing. I think it's important for your listeners that full disclosure here before we go any further. I wanted to hate this car. I had the impression that it, too big. I didn't find it particularly good looking, not a real Land Rover, more crawler, all of that. So I should say that first, that I did want to hate the car.
That's good to hear, by the way. I like that.
And you were suitably disappointed in that pursuit, were you not?
Well, we'll get into that.
Okay.
It was a very interesting day. So first where we started was he drove it to their, and I'm going to call it an off-road park, if you will, but it's sort of an area of land that they own there in Manchester, Vermont. It's basically a very large area of woods. They have, all of the descents and the climbs and all the different things that you can put the car through, different areas. First and foremost, he walked me around the car. And we talked about the differences from the LR4. Obviously, it's bigger in every respect. It can lift up higher, which was actually very, very impressive. Interior-wise, this is where the surprises actually started for me. It was interesting. The interior was high quality, and it was very high quality. But it didn't feel overly luxurious. You didn't feel like you were getting in a Range Rover or a Bentley Bentayga or anything like that. It was interesting. It was very high quality, but you wouldn't feel guilty getting it dirty, if that makes any sense. The vision, when you were sitting in it, was surprisingly good. It's very, very strange, this car. It feels smaller once you get inside of it, if that makes any sense.
Just like a regular Discovery, an older Discovery. I mean, the 2s seemed always smaller inside, I thought.
Yeah,
especially for the driver.
Which is kind of the reverse of
it's smaller on the inside.
I was going to say it's the opposite of the Mini experience, which is tiny on the outside and huge on the inside.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And that was interesting. It was very good, and the vision on it was fantastic, and I'll get more into that a little bit later. But the off-road park, as I said, very large area. We started going through the trails. The car was surprisingly good at navigating obstacles. The instructor was very, very particular about how to get around trees, mostly because he thought that I was going to bang up his car. But it navigated around it very, very well. The vision on it was surprisingly good. The car, in terms of hill climbs, they had some very, very steep climbs. Car did very, very well there. Where it really impressed me, though, was on the descents. Very, very steep hills. They've changed the hill descent control a little bit over the LR4. Now, the LR4 has the hill descent control, as does the Discovery 2. Don't believe the Discovery 1 has it, but
nope.
No. On the LR4, you can adjust the speed of the hill descent control, which is very good. You can make it go a little bit faster, make it go a little bit slower. You can do the same thing on the Discovery 5, but there's also a visual representation on the dashboard. They sort of have, and it's hard to describe, but it's sort of like another, you have your tachometer there, your rev counter. It's like that. And there's a green zone that you want to keep it in. And as long as you keep it within that zone, adjusting the speed, the wheels won't lock up and it won't start sliding down the hill. It's very impressive. Absolutely magnificent. The other thing about the car that was interesting was on the LR4, one of the things that was very irritating about it is you would set it into off-road height all the way up. And then after 30 miles an hour, it would lower to regular height for safety reasons. Normally, this is fine, but if you were on like a sandy road, deep sand, where you could go over 35 miles an hour safely, but you wanted to have it raised all the way up, you couldn't do that. The car would lower it. Well, they've addressed that with the Discovery 5. It will lower after 30 miles an hour, but it only lowers half the distance. It's sort of a step down. It won't go all the way down to regular driving height. There's a little bit of an in the middle. And then I think after 50 miles an hour, I can't remember the exact speed, it'll go all the way to regular driving height.
Well,
I thought that was quite good.
Yeah, is this with the automatic terrain response, or are you setting it to snow, mud ruts, or sand, I guess it would be, and then when you go over 35, it would drop down? Is that correct? Does that seem right?
Both. It's both ways. There's two ways you can do it. You can select the terrain response, so you can select mud ruts or snow or rock crawl. But there's also a master button, where it all becomes automatic. Now, the instructor, he was very good. He was very, very honest about this car. He sort of suggested to me, when we started all of this, he said to me, we are going to use technology today, but you are not going to learn to use it as a crux. It is something that you're going to learn how to use to enhance your ability to get this car where it needs to be.
Smart.
But it's not a safety net. Mm-hmm. So he wouldn't let me put it in the automatic sort itself out mode. It was all I had to set it. And I'll give you another example of that. I think that's really what surprised me about this car and the training that they provided with me. And the instructor's name was David. He was excellent. But I sort of had the impression that I was just going to get into it and the car was going to drive itself, basically, if you will. It's not like that at all. You really need to know what to do, how to do it, how to work with the traction control, for example, what setting to have it in. And the other thing that surprised me with it was how much we used the gearbox. We never had it in fully automatic mode. I always thought the paddle shifters on the LR4 and the Discovery 5s, I always thought it was a bit of a gimmick, make you think that you're on a McLaren or something like that. No, it's for off-roading. It's fantastic. Because, we'd be driving along and he'd be like, no, you need to be in second gear. Boom, boom, you put it in second gear and you go. That was a large part of the training, was how to use the gearbox. And I was very, very surprised by that. I thought it was just going to be put into drive and go. It's not like that at all, which I like. I thought that was great.
That's from the paddle shifters.
Yeah, that was what it was all on the paddle shifters. We were doing that, and I actually liked them. My LR4 doesn't have paddle shifters. My mom and dad's does. Mine's sort of on the pistol shifter in the middle. Mm-hmm. But I like the paddle shifters once you knew what they were actually for. As I said, I thought they were a gimmick. So we did that for a few hours. Very, very impressive. And then we did a mountain trail. So we drove basically over Mount Equinox, which is the big mountain there. Sort of interesting side note, it's actually owned by Carthusian monks. And those are the monks that take a vow of silence. And they have some compound in the middle of the forest that you can never see. They never talk to anybody. But what they do is they have to be self-sufficient by their religion. So they sell parts of the mountain off for logging rights every few years. They also harvest the water coming off of the mountain for hydroelectric power, and they sell it back to the town of Manchester, which I thought was interesting. And then the other way they make money is they lease the trails to Land Rover, which was fantastic. And it was, I have to say, overall, the entire experience was very real. It was not it wasn't a demonstration. It was real training. I didn't feel like they were trying to sell me a car. I got the impression they were trying to teach me how to drive one. And the off-roading that we did over the mountain trail was absolutely legitimate. You know, David in the back of the Discovery 5, he had all of this recovery equipment, straps, chains, tire chains, shovels, a chainsaw. He had it all there. To give you an example, there was a point where we had to cross a maintenance road to get from one part of the trail to the other. And somebody had basically used a snow plow, and there was this massive 6-foot mound of snow in front of the entrance to the trail. So David, the instructor, gets out of the car, he goes to the back, puts a shovel in my hand, and he says, "Start digging," which was great.
Good.
Teaching me how to use it. And another great example was we didn't need it. The car was on road tires, all season Pirelli tires.
Interesting.
And although we didn't need snow chains at any point, even though there was a lot of snow, the snow was very deep, but we didn't need the snow chains. But he got them out, and he taught me how to put them on. And he said, if you're going to off-road your car, you need to either put on some proper tires or put on some snow chains, which John knows from my Instagram post from yesterday I did not listen to and got stuck in the snow. But that's a whole other story. But no, it was absolutely fantastic. So I suppose...
If I pause you, snow chains are also good for mud. Because we had a guy years ago when we went off road, and he had a Range Rover, and he put chains on, tire chains on, and made it easier for him to go through some really, really slick mud. He swore by them.
Yeah, I was very, very impressed with those. And after my debacle from yesterday, I'm absolutely ordering a set. They're not that expensive, and they're fantastic. But back to the Discovery 5. So in terms of positive and negatives, it is a proper off-roader. I was blown away with how capable it is. However, you have to know how to drive it. It's very involving to drive. It is not a get in and just it does itself sort of a car. You really need to know what you're doing. In terms of the negatives, on the LR4, it has the split tailgate, and I love that. This does not have that. It's just a regular hatch style. I didn't like it. Having said that, when he went to the back to get something, a piece of equipment, there's a little button on the top of it, and it'll shut automatically. I have to admit that was pretty cool. It was sort of useful, even though I don't like it. I have to admit that was pretty cool. The engine was very good. Not exciting, though. I'm a bit antiquated. I think Land Rovers should have basically a minimum of engine options. You need a 4-cylinder petrol, you need a 4-cylinder diesel, and then you need a V8. The supercharged V6, though, was very good. In terms of towing, I didn't get to experience that. I did notice it had a whopping big Class 4 hitch on the back of it. So they are definitely targeting it towards people that want to tow. Now, that's what I use Land Rovers for mostly, because I do Formula Ford racing. So I'm towing cars all over North America. But I didn't get to experience that, but I've read that it's a very good tow car. The car was magnificent off-road. On the road, it was actually a little bit boring. It's bizarre. You didn't feel, on the road, you didn't feel like you were in a truck. You know, it's a unibody car. It's not like a ladder frame like an LR4 or a D2 is. You felt that. It's a lot lighter. According to David, it's over 1,000 pounds lighter than the Discovery 4. And I double checked him on that. And it is. That is, and you feel it.
Yeah.
It's extremely significant. The car feels very light. The only other negative that I have for it, and this is not a Land Rover thing, this is a car in general thing. And the real reason I couldn't buy it, I cannot stand the stop-start stuff.
Oh, that stuff drives me nuts. I can't deal with that.
I can't. It's horrible. And you can turn it off, but you have to turn it off every time you get in the car. You can't go into the computer and tell it that I never want it to come on again. That just drove me bonkers. So every time you turn the car off, you go back in, you turn it on again.
Does it do that on off-road, or does when you go into off-road mode, does it automatically disable that feature?
Well, I don't know, but what I noticed about it was every time we would get in the car, the instructor would push the reverse. You know how you can disable the reverse warning sensors? Mm-hmm. He turned those off, and I think he was also turning off the stop-start before I even had a chance to see what he was doing. It was interesting. So I don't think it does. I found that very, very irritating. In terms of the Land Rover driving experience, though, fantastic. Cannot say enough great things about them. It was proper training. I never felt like they were trying to sell me a car. I felt like they wanted me to enjoy Land Rover. That's what it was all about. And the things that I learned were phenomenal. It's also run by enthusiasts, like the instructor, David. He is restoring a Range Rover Classic. He's a diehard fan. He's not a salesman. He's a real Land Rover enthusiast. The only negative to the driving experience, and I know this sounds very petty, but there's no bloody gift shop. It's the most unbelievable thing. You've been driving all day, and you get back to the center, and your wallet is itching to buy Land Rover jackets and coffee mugs and all of these things because you feel great about it. And there's no bloody gift shop. I have to think that that's a Land Rover corporate thing. I have to think that they must not let them do that, because to me that seems so obvious.
Yeah. I think when I did
that's
LR
bizarre.
experience in
it
the
may
UK,
also have to deal with, which states they're actually selling vehicles in, because they don't sell any vehicles in Vermont.
Yeah, but selling merchandise is completely different. I don't think that's it.
Or is it a function of the estate that hosts this thing, that maybe they don't want that kind of merchandising happening on their property?
That would make more sense.
Yeah, it could be.
Yeah, here's the only thing, though. I can tell you that my mom and dad went to the Land Rover Experience Center in Asheville, North Carolina, with their Land Rover, and they didn't have a gift shop either.
I don't know.
It was very bizarre. In conclusion, and I'll answer any questions you guys have, but I walked away from it. I did not hate the car anymore. I wanted to, but I didn't. And it's really funny because when I first got there and I saw it, I thought it was dreadfully ugly. But after Dave driving it off-road, and I was walking back to my car and I looked back at the car, and for some reason it wasn't quite as ugly as when I first saw it. I sort of fell in love with it. The part that was confusing about it all, and I'd love to know what you guys think about this, but the car is way more capable than it needs to be. You know, we always hear about Land Rover owners, when they buy the car, they're never going to use it off-road and so on and so forth. So I don't know why they've built it so capable to be off-road, because let's be honest, they really don't need to. And he really got into this, all the engineering, where they placed the exhaust, where they placed the B-pillar, the drive shafts and everything. He got into me with this, and it's all designed for off-road. You get the impression that the engineers that designed the car, off-roading was the first thing on their mind. And then everything else came after that, which was not what I was expecting. And I don't know why they do that. The only thing that I could think of, and it's a bit of a theory, but I think that the off-roading capability, that's for the second owner, isn't it? The first owner is going to buy the car and just drive it around normally. But it's us. It's the enthusiasts that buy the car used. We're the ones that are going to go on about the legendary capability of Land Rover.
Right, and you will lose the enthusiast if you don't build it right. And if you're marketing this thing as the best 4x4 by far, you got to build it that way.
Yeah.
Well, yeah. I will disagree with some of the things you've said, Nigel.
Of course you will.
Well, yeah, right. But you said that it was designed by engineers. That is not true. The Discovery 5, in fact, is designed by designers. And where the B-pillar and those things are placed are in conjunction with engineering, or so we're told.
Right. It was designed by designers and engineered by engineers.
Yes. And so those things, maybe after the fact they tell you that the B-pillar was there because it helps with off-road. I don't buy that.
Well, I bet there was a fair amount of discussion, maybe even argument, between designers and engineers during the process.
From what we understand, McGovern came in as when Tata bought Land Rover, then engineering and design were then placed on equal footing, whereas previous to Tata owning Land Rover, engineering superseded, oversaw design, and so they're now supposed to be of equal weight. Which, whether that's good or bad, it's just the way it is now. I'm
fine with that as long as design doesn't take the front seat to engineering. They need to be equal.
Well, and that's the interesting part. And John, I will concede that you're absolutely right. I can't argue that. The only thing that I will say is it felt a lot more capable than it needed to be.
Sure.
And that's a good thing.
Yeah, and that is a good thing. The only thing that I'll say to you, and I'll challenge you, is that go to the Experience Center and drive one off-road. It is different. You walk away from it feeling very, very different about the car. Mm-hmm. Engineering and design and so forth, I don't know. I'm sure design comes first and then engineering comes second. That's probably very, very true. But all I can say to you is it's a bloody good car off-road. It really is.
I know. I'm sure it is. I don't disagree with you on that. I'm just agreeing on some of the premises that design was engineers designed it, which is not true, and that is it? I don't think, and nor do I think it was designed for the second or third owner. That I don't think so. Maybe it was engineered for the second or third owner who might then use it for its intended capability. I have to believe, and he's pretty much said this. Jerry McGovern has said he doesn't care about the enthusiast, and so that's why I don't think those things that to be true. But just to be a little controversial,
right? He doesn't, but I think the engineers do, and if those two can balance each other out, then we're okay.
Okay, I'll concede that point. Concede that point. How do you compare it, Nigel?
I think that's a good point.
How do you compare it to your D2?
Compared to the D2,
because I know you've taken the D2 off-road and you've done probably some similar things. I'm kind of curious to see how, define the 4 and the 5. They're kind of close, but how about the 2 and the 5?
I think in terms of, oh boy, that's tough. The D2 feels a lot more like a truck. In terms of what it can accomplish off-road wise, if you gave me a challenge and said, you have to get over this mountain on the same tires, you can have the D2 or you can have the Discovery 5. I would have to pick the Discovery 5. I think it will get over the mountain better. There's no doubt of that in my mind. I think also in terms of the biggest difference that I noticed was actually on the descents. And that goes back. Now, the Discovery 2 has the hill descent control. It is miles ahead on the Discovery 5. you feel a lot more confident going down extremely steep hills. Now, they're both capable of doing it. Also, the ride height, because we were also able to get it into, the Discovery 2, it's locked where it's at. And you could put lift kits on it and so on and so forth. But the Discovery 5, it really does go high. And you don't realize it until it was actually quite funny, because when we were on the trail, we stopped for a moment because he wanted to teach me about tire chains. And I got out of it. And I fell arse over tit because the thing was so high and I didn't realize it. I fell out of the car. And then there's also the super secret extended mode, which isn't in the manual, and it's the same on the LR4. But if you're in a situation, there's sensors that somehow it knows, and it will go another 2 inches above its maximum ride height as it is.
Wow.
Yeah.
That started. The P38s had that, by the way. That's old technology for Land Rover.
I did not know that.
Yep.
Right.
They don't advertise it, but it's in there. It's only like an additional 3/4 of an inch. There's not a lot of travel in the P38 system, but at least they were working on the technology that far back.
I gotcha. Yeah, I asked what the key-off was, and he suggested that if all 4 wheels were spinning for a certain period of time, it would go into this super secret mode that they don't even tell you about in the manual. It was bizarre. Yeah. I didn't understand why they would have something, but they didn't want you to know about it. I thought that was weird. But
so compared to the D2, do you feel I would think, based on what you're talking about, the D2 seems like you would be more of an active driver, and you would be having to do more assessment of where to put your wheels, when to turn, and with the speed to go, where it seems that there's probably less driver interaction. This is my question in the Discovery 5. Would you agree with that, or do you have a thought on that?
Well, here's what I'll say about that, and that is a great question. In terms of using the vehicle's controls off-roading, I did it a lot more in the Discovery 5 than the D2. However, there was more in the Discovery 5. There's more buttons to push to begin with, but also the instructor was training me to do all of these things. Now, if he had me in a D2, would it be the same situation? I don't know. I can't answer that. Mm-hmm. But he was, and this is a key point, the instructor was training me to use the functions and the gearbox and all of the settings. So I was doing it a lot more in the Discovery 5 than the D2.
Right.
It's a little bit of both.
And there's a lot more functionality in the D5 than in the D2. So, there's only a few buttons you can actually press in the D2 to get you much. I think
the door handle, I think there's a turn signal. If you get the HSE, you might get fog lights
on and off, high and low range. I always wished the D2 had a second gear, because I used third all the time and would have loved to use second.
What about on road? You said you weren't as excited by the D5 on road. It felt kind of, I guess, bland. How does that compare to the D2 on road?
Well, okay. I'm going to give a stereotypically enthusiast answer here.
You're among enthusiasts.
Yes. So on the road, it drives better than the D2. However, the D2 feels more, I'm going to throw this out here, Land Rover-esque on the road. Okay. In a D2, you get a little bit nervous going around corners too fast, if you know what I mean. And that's part of the charm of the Land Rover. On the Discovery 5, it didn't feel like a truck. And I don't know if that's because it's a unibody or and it's probably a combination of things, but it felt very.
Is the 5 taller
but it wasn't
than the 2?
Fun.
Is the 5 taller than the 2? Or did it certainly, I'm guessing it doesn't feel taller than the 2.
No, yes, I believe it is. I don't have the specs, but I would say it absolutely is. And when we saw Discovery 1s and 2s in town, it definitely looked bigger, taller, and wider.
I believe it's got the active cornering, active braking for cornering and stuff like that too, that in addition to the air suspension, all of that functionality the D2 just never had. It's got some of that added feature, and certainly 1,000 pounds less weight
yes.
on the corners.
and here, it's funny you mention that, because this is an interesting part of it. It's that in the Discovery 2, and even the LR4, the Discovery 4, when the traction control's engaging, in the Discovery 2, it makes a horrendous noise. You know that the traction control's coming on in the Discovery 2.
Very unique noise that it makes, too.
It is a very unique noise. In the Discovery 5, I never knew, you never heard it, and you never knew that it was on. Now,
actually, I kind of like
I don't know, but
knowing that it's active. That's what I like about the D2.
Yeah, but it's not exactly a reassuring sound from the D2.
Not until you understand what it is. I mean, when you take passengers for the first time and it engages, they think the thing's about ready to explode, which, of course, it's fun. But I mean, I like knowing when my traction control is actually doing something, because it lets me be aware and be thinking about the fact that, maybe we're a little compromised here. We need to be a little more careful.
Well, you couldn't even feel it in the tire. You know how you can feel when the traction control is coming on just through the car? I couldn't feel it. It just didn't. It was as if, and I don't know if the computer was never letting me, we were in snow mode, obviously, the whole time for the most part. I wonder if the computer was never letting me spin the tires to the point where I needed the traction control to come on, but you never knew that it was coming on. I'm sure it was in very small amounts. But the point I'm making is that I get the feeling that the traction control system is vastly superior. It's generations ahead of what it was on the D2.
And
I'd be disappointed if it wasn't.
Yeah, and that's the case for all manufacturers, because they've, very first anti-lock brakes I had, you felt it through the pedal, and that's certainly not the case now.
When I drove a D5 at the Land Rover Experience in Asheville, you did feel the traction control come on, but it had to be pointed out to me that was what it was. The instructor told me, "Did you feel that?" And I'm like, "I drive a D2, feel what?" And he's like, "That was the traction control." And I kind of looked at him, and it was like, "Yeah, there's a huge difference." It's more, for lack of a better term, it's more civilized.
Sure, as it should be. Technology's gotten better. It should be more civilized.
And like Nigel, I went to that Land Rover Experience to drive the D5 expecting to hate it. I walked up to it with a sneer, for a lack of a better term, and got out of it with a newfound respect.
Respect is a wonderful word. That is absolutely so. That is a correct word. And it was interesting. And the other thing that I'll mention about it was the suspension was very interesting too. Now we're comparing to the Discovery 2 here, or even the Discovery 4. When you were going over rocks in a Discovery 2 or even a Discovery 4, you would feel every single one, and your teeth would be chattering. In this, it wasn't like that. It was a very, very smooth ride. So I imagine that the suspension, the air suspension, is doing a lot of work on a Discovery 5. And it was little things too. When I raise and lower my Discovery 4 suspension, it works very nicely. And you hear the pump, and it lowers and it raises. On the Discovery 5, you could barely hear the pump going. And it was perfectly smooth, and it was very, very quick. So these things they've made a big change on. It is, I think, a lot of people say that the LR3 and the LR4, the Discovery 3, Discovery 4, were very, very similar, just very, very minor changes. This isn't like that. It's a big step in improvement.
I had one more question for Nigel. You hinted at your other life with your vintage racing, and your disco has to do, well, let's just say it has to do important things in support of that. How do you think the D5 would do in that job, number one? And number two, the experience, the education you got on the experience drive, what do you take away from that will help you to do those important things in the trucks that you have?
Great question, and I'll address with the racing first, because that's how I got into Land Rovers. Was when I started racing, I needed a tow car, and I made one of the biggest mistakes of my life, and I bought a Ford Expedition. Shockingly terrible. I could not get to a race without it blowing a coil pack. It was unbelievably terrible, this car. Shockingly bad. And I used to just hit things with it because I hated it so much. I really did. I hated it. I had a realization that I needed to get a car that I liked because then I'd look after it. So I bought the Discovery 2. Never let me down. I got to so many races. The Discovery 2 never let me down. And then I've got the Discovery 4. Same scenario. I've never missed a race because of the car. It has towed 5,000 pounds without issue. In terms of towing with the Discovery 5, which I didn't get to do, it's outfitted for it. It's definitely got the hitch. I didn't, and I wanted to look, but I didn't get the opportunity. I didn't see if it had the electronics. One of the weird things with the Discovery 4, they will not put a trailer braking system on it in North America. You have to put it on yourself.
That's messed up.
That is. Yeah.
It is. They'll sell you a hitch all day long, but they will not put a trailer braking system, which Land Rover in England makes. Although trailer braking in Europe is a little bit different than it is in America, but you can buy one that works on American Land Rovers, no problem. But the dealership will not put it on. I don't know if the Discovery 5 has the trailer braking wiring already in it, or if you have to put it in. That would be a very good question.
I'm sure it comes with. I'm sure it's all pre-wired. All that stuff's probably just pre-wired to factory. It's easier that way.
I would like to think so. The only thing that I have to say is it's much lighter, and when you're towing a big trailer, you want a big, heavy SUV.
Yeah.
I'd be interested to see how it deals with that. I didn't see any sort of a tow mode on it. That doesn't mean that it wasn't there because I wasn't looking for it. But I'd be very interested to see how it deals with towing a big, heavy trailer.
Well, they did do that video, that demonstration where it towed the Australian road train without slipping. It obviously has, they demonstrated in that publicity video, its extreme towing capability. Now, whether then it can actually make it to a vintage race and back or not are two different things.
Well, and getting that road train rolling is one thing. Making it around a corner and or stopping is an entirely different thing.
Right.
And I actually got into this. I don't want to call it an argument, but I got into this with them because we were getting into the engines. And when you're towing, and this is all in my opinion, I do not claim to be an expert, but when you're towing, you want a big V8 towing along. Now, the instructor made the argument to me, well, it's lighter and this V6 supercharged has the same amount of torque and all of that, and that's fantastic. But you still have 6 cylinders pulling the trailer instead of 8. Does that make sense?
I get your point. On the other hand, from an engineering standpoint, torque is torque, buddy. As long as it has it, you're okay.
Can't disagree. But that's opinion. Now, in terms of what I learned, the education was fantastic in terms of placing the car, how to use it. A lot of the racetracks I go to, funny enough, you do a surprising amount of off-roading on the infields, getting from one end of the track to the other. So I did learn a lot. I feel much more confident in driving a vehicle, a Land Rover, I should say, off-road after doing that training. And I recommend it to anybody. Anybody, go do a training course. You will learn something.
Did it help you with your racing?
No. It was funny because when we first got in there, I told him that I was a racing car driver, and you sort of saw the blood drain out of his face. I thought he got a little bit nervous, but we were fine.
Well, I'm still very impressed that you came out feeling that it was, having so much respect for it, feeling that it's such a very capable vehicle, and that you didn't feel it slipping or anything like that while you were off-road in the snow in Manchester, and they still had the stock all-season Pirelli tires on it.
Yes.
That's, as somebody who lives and drives in Vermont weather all the time, and we're back to a year with actual snow here, it's just shocking that it can feel that capable and be that capable. What I would call poor tires.
I agree. Now, in a little caveat to that was that he did say to me, he said, we're going to go out there on road tires. However, I have a ton of recovery equipment in the back of this Discovery 5. Do we ever need it? No. But he said that, if you are going to do proper off-roading, I do recommend you have a proper set of tires on it. So they did recommend that, but did we need it at any point? No. And you really would have thought that you should have, but it was very, very, very good.
Yeah, and that just adds a whole additional level of respect for me.
Nigel, I want to thank you very much for coming on the show and giving us a review of the Discovery 5.
It was my pleasure.
Anywhere people can track you down for your racing, I think you have don't you have a Facebook page for?
Yeah, absolutely. Please become a fan. We need all the fans we can get of CASS Racing on Facebook, CASS Racing. Just type it in there, it'll come up. And I race mostly East Coast, but I also do F1600 support race to the Canadian Formula One Grand Prix every year. So if any of your listeners happen to go to that race, please come by the support paddock and say hello.
Is that the one in Montreal?
Yes.
Yeah, I remember. Yes, you seem to go to Montreal periodically, so that was cool. Yeah, good stuff. Yeah, I came out to see you at...
Come on, you can call it Beaver Run.
Beaver Run, there we go.
Called.
Wampum.
Pittsburgh International Race Complex. Yep, that's absolutely right.
It's still Beaver Run.
In Wampum, which is like, I'll Beaver Run in Wampum. No wonder they say all that. They say Pittsburgh International Raceway. Yeah, sign there. Anyways, thanks again.
Wonderful track.
It is. It's very nice. Yeah, I really had a good time when I saw you racing, and then and they had the Finch Grand Prix stuff going. That was really cool. Cool time.
That was the race I blew up my engine, wasn't it?
I believe it was. Yes.
Yes, that wasn't so fun for me.
No.
That's not what you go there for.
Nope. When you lose water and oil pressure all at the same time, it's a big disaster. Makes a mess. Makes a big mess.
Thanks again very much, Nigel. We appreciate you coming on the show.
My pleasure. Thank you, gentlemen.
Thank you very much.
Welcome back to the Centresteer Podcast, show number 58. It continues to be the January 2018 show. Our next guest is Casey Deming. Casey is one of the coordinators, beginners, starters of the Georgia Bushcraft, which is a gathering of, I guess, adventurers and I don't want to say survivalists because I don't think that's the right word, right, Casey?
Exactly.
Yeah. So welcome to the show, Casey.
Thanks for having me, guys.
Yeah. So tell us about Georgia Bushcraft. What is that event exactly?
So what is Bushcraft?
That's a good question. Georgia Bushcraft is it's basically an outdoor education program we started back in 2012. Right outside of Atlanta, Georgia, in Watkinsville. And it really just started with a group of guys getting together, camping, and having the opportunity to come out and really try out some of the new gear and things like that. I worked at an outdoor store right outside of Atlanta for years, and most of these people were my customers, and they wanted a place to come out and try things out, and they just bought their $300 knife, and they wanted to go destroy it somewhere. So that's really where we started.
Sounds like Land Rover ownership.
Oh, I'm telling you, buy something nice and then just tear it up in the woods. So
exactly.
But
who would take their Freelander off road right after buying it? I don't know who would do that.
I'm sure nobody.
I'm still working on who in their right mind to buy a Freelander, but anyway.
No. Let's get back to Bushcraft. So, what exactly is Bushcrafting?
So, Bushcraft can really mean a lot of things. To me, and I guess to our group, it's a mixture of primitive skills and learning how to start a fire primitively or navigate at nighttime, build a shelter, but also kind of incorporating today's technology, today's things. So using, a new tent from REI, but still understanding how, whenever you're going somewhere, having the ability to start a fire without using a lighter. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. It's really just focusing on primitive skills, but also kind of incorporating with contemporary things.
So being able to live a little bit, as you said, primitively, but yet still have some of the normal creature comforts that you might have. You might have a modern tent, or you might have fire starter and know how to use the fire starter, I assume.
Exactly. Yeah. It's basically being able to bring all of your knowledge and everything with you without having to pack more with you than you would need. That's kind of the idea.
The Georgia event, do you have just one event in the spring? It looks like it takes place in late March. Do you have other events throughout the year?
We do. So we host 2 main events a year, a spring gathering and a fall gathering. In between there, we have a bunch of different classes, anything from wilderness first aid and first responder courses to blacksmithing, trapping, a bunch of different things. And we're really trying to get more into kind of the overland side of things, focusing on vehicle recovery or basic day-to-day type, how to wire a trailer up and things like that.
How to use a high lift jack, for example, I assume would be another.
Exactly.
Right.
Exactly. How to recover your vehicle using a winch or different things like that. That's kind of more of the focus we're focusing on this year. Just because, bushcrafting, you could either be the really super primitive guy, who wears a kilt and that's about it, goes into the woods or a loincloth, or the guy who's glamping super hard, with his rooftop tent and his Land Rover or whatever. It's trying a mix of both worlds, and that's kind of what it is.
It's not just Land Rover people that glamp. I want to please be clear.
Just putting that out there.
Yeah, I understand.
Yeah, I see nothing glamorous in sleeping on an old Land Rover, but okay.
Yeah.
But that's really what Georgia Bushcraft is. It's really the idea of mixing the comforts of camping without having a camper, but still knowing how to do these primitive skills that have been taught forever, kind of forgotten about.
So the event is in March 23rd through the 25th in Watkinsville. Is it in Watkinsville itself or somewhere else?
It is. So We're right outside. We're technically in Watkinsville address, but it's Oconee County. We're in really Farmington, Georgia, but it's not even a town. And I don't even know how to describe it, really. We're in the country.
Gotcha.
That's about it.
How far from Atlanta?
We're about 100 miles from Atlanta, kind of right outside the perimeter.
What direction?
So we are east, a little bit northeast.
Okay.
So if you're familiar with Atlanta, basically take 20 east till you hit Madison, Georgia, and cruise up like you're going towards Athens, and that's where we're at.
The fee is $100. What do you get? What would happen for someone? Do you camp there? Do you? I assume there's cabins. Do you get food? Do you bring your own? Do you go out and kill something?
All of the above. No, but so $100. The $100 price point right now. That's kind of an early bird entry fee for an adult. Normal price is $125, and what it is, it's primitive camping. It's available all weekend. Basically, the gates open at 10 a.m. on Friday and go till Sunday afternoon. And what you get with your admission, you get a handful of different things. One, we do a custom patch. I'm sure you guys, being overlanders, love patches like we do. So
almost as much as we love stickers.
We got a lot of stickers too. I personally am a sticker junkie and patch junkie, but we do a custom patch for everyone. This is our 6th one coming up. But you also, so we work with different instructors, vendors, sponsors for each event. And so what we do is kind of their booth cost or a sponsorship cost. A good portion of it is they just send merchandise, send down gear. And what we do on Sundays, we do a big raffle and giveaway. And so back in the fall, we had about $2,000 worth of gear. CVT sent some stuff down. We got a lot of knife makers and things, so they'll send down knives. LT Wright, they sent down 5 knives, I think, last year for us to just give away or raffle off. So everybody gets 5 raffle tickets, and that kind of goes into the pot. And so if you want to buy more, you could buy more. Cool. And all that goes back to the group. But the real fun stuff and kind of the meat of the admission fee is we have instructors. We have classes going on all weekend. So we have everything from blacksmithing to falconry, pretty much any sort of primitive type survival. But this year, we're trying to incorporate, like I said, more of an overlanding side of things. Steve from Southeast Overland is coming down. He's going to do some vehicle recovery classes, line splicing, things like that. Jason from Mountain State Overland is he's going to come down and teach some classes on the video side of things, the adventure travel side of things. So talking about prepping for an overlanding trip, you know what I mean? Like figuring out your route planning and different things like that, but also talking about the YouTube side of things, videoing your trip and how all that jazz works. So tons of classes, gear, patches, fun things all weekend. And
is there a group gathering for dinner or something like that? Do you have one of those events or that part of the event?
So what we do is in the past we've done cooking meals or food meals as optional things if you wanted to sign up for them, but we are still a really small group. And I about had everybody quit on me after the last spring when we had to cook for close to 200 people.
Whoa!
And yeah, it was a lot of fun.
Yeah. Yes.
But yeah, so it's kind of like BYO bring your own food.
Yes, I understand that. Yes. Yes. But, otherwise, the cost of this would probably be at least twice as much to handle the food. Yes.
It's rough. Food is very expensive unless you have like a wholesale account. Mm-hmm. And Costco and Sam's don't give you that good a discount when you're buying that much stuff. So that I've been able to find.
Sure. But, compared to like a large Land Rover events that I've been to, I mean, this is in line with that, and a little cheaper, mainly because they have a food. They'll usually feed you at least one meal, and so that certainly increase the cost of an event. So.
Oh yeah,
I understand. I understand. Yes.
So we're working to get maybe some food trucks out here so they have the option, so you don't have to eat Mountain House all weekend.
That seems to be the new thing. Getting food trucks. I've noticed at the various events. They had some at the Overland Expo East and some other places.
Exactly. So we'll see. We'll see what happens with all that.
And then there's a fall event, right? Is it the same thing, just in the fall?
It is. It's pretty much. We do them twice a year. I'm trying to figure out why I do this to myself. But we do them twice a year, and we try to mix it up a little bit. You know what I mean? We try to get different instructors every time. We worked with a lot of different people that have been on the quote unquote survival shows. We try to transition through different instructors for each event. But the fall. That's actually going to be the weekend before Overland East. So we'll try to get some of the guys, maybe they're on the West Coast, that'll be over here for that. Maybe we'll get some collaborations going on at our event the week early, but it's to be seen.
So how did you get into bushcrafting, Casey? I assume it has to do with the Griffin pocket tool, which is, did you like how he transitioned?
Yeah, real clever, John.
Thank you.
Thanks, John. Now, bushcrafting really just started from my background working in the outdoor industry, selling axes and knives and things like that, and wanting to learn more and, watching the people learn these traditional skills and go out and play with fire and cut trees down and build shelters and stuff like that. That's kind of what got me going with it. And the Griffin kind of was another side of that, where I wanted a keychain multi-tool that did a bunch of things, mostly held my keys on my belt loop. Because growing up, I always had one of those big load-bearing carabiners on my belt loop. And my girlfriend, my wife now, girlfriend at the time, they always called me a janitor. So I always had a billion keys, and I was jingling, and you heard me from a mile away. And so the Griffin, the idea behind that was I wanted a single, multi-tool that, like I said, held my keys, but opened beer and, was kind of fun and gadgety. And
it's very, it's very cool. If you've not experienced it, this is the Griffin Pocket Tool. It's griffinpockettool.com, by the way. It's, and it just, the website just moved. I was going to say all about it. So it's a nail, nail, here we go. Nail puller, pry tool, ruler, pocket clip, scoring tool, 7-hex wrench, and a bottle opener. There you go. So that does all those things. It's pretty cool.
Right, because opening the beer, of course, is the number one priority.
Of course. I mean, that's really where it all came from.
But I don't see any problem with that. I don't see any problem with that at all.
Didn't figure you would, John.
No. Well, I have a portable mobile bottle opener. It's called a Series truck, Series 109 with a special bumper.
Just hit it right on the bumper. It's good to go.
No, it's actually got an integrated military-grade bottle opener welded as part of it.
That's awesome. I'm going to have to check that out. It'll be the new multi-tool.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, it was so well engineered the first time. This is the version 2. Version 1 would take the glass off the top of the bottle. And so
it would actually just separate the entire top of the bottle from the rest of the bottle.
Yeah, not just the metal from
cap
the glass.
And all.
Mm-hmm.
See, then it creates a weapon. So it's kind of like a twofer right there.
Look at that. See, now I didn't think of that. I didn't think that it would be the weapon.
I got my head in the gutter. Sorry.
No. That's perfect. That's perfect. Griffin, what else do you guys do besides the pocket tool? Do you have other things coming up?
We do. So we have 3 different variants right now. The original, a XL, and a mini. So it depends on really what you like. If you want something that's actually a serious prying tool that also has anywhere up to 13 millimeter wrenches. So we have that, and then there's the smaller mini, which is half the size and half the weight. But the newest product we have that we're working on now that actually somewhat applies to overlanding specifically is the new Griffin Rescue Tool. Tell us more. Is something that we're hoping to debut at Overland West.
Tell us more. We like rescue tools.
So
give us an exclusive.
Well, so we've been working on the design for a while now. And it kind of started, my brother's a police officer, and, you know, he's kind of said over the years, oh, I like your multi-tool and all, but it doesn't really apply to me, you know, when I'm not really opening beers while I'm working. So, you know, but what if you did like a breaching tool or rescue tool or something that would apply to law enforcement or first responders? And so I kind of got the gears turning. There's a ton of them out there. You can
pocket Jaws of life.
More or less. No, it has a little hydraulic on it. You know, bust open a door. No, but it's a simple little multi-tool, but it's designed to where it's something that's actually going to work all the time, but it has replaceable blades on it, different things like that. I'll go down, you know, kind of talk about the different features of it, and maybe why it applies to overlanders or first responders in general. You still have the prying tool aspect of it. So if you need to actually pry into something, we're going to be using probably around a D2 type tool steel. So something that's not going to bend or break. It's actually going to be something you would use. But you also, some of the differences between this one and the original tools, we're putting a seatbelt cutter on there, but it also will have a replaceable blade. So the idea is you can actually use it as a strap cutter, but you can pop the blade in and out if you ever do have to use it. Because, you know, if you see like the Benchmade ones or most of them, the other rescue tools out there, most of them have like a grind in it to where once you use it, it's so sharp, but it's also so fragile that it's kind of a one and done use. So that's one feature that we've been working with. But two, we've got oxygen wrenches. So there's two of those on there. So anybody in the EMS type world, that would be definitely helpful. Three, we've got the window punch. So obviously that would apply to anybody trapped in a vehicle. So that's on the top of it. And then we also have incorporated a type of wire gate carabiner to it. So you can actually strap it to MOLLE or to a belt loop somewhere in your car. So if for some reason you ever do have a rollover, bam, it's always there, you know, attached to one of your Blue Ridge Overland MOLLE packs or something on the back of your seat or on your visor.
And it's not a missile in the vehicle either.
Exactly.
How big is this? I don't know if you said that. I'm sorry I missed it. What's the size?
Oh, no, you're good. We haven't finalized the exact size of it, but it'll be about 4 to 5 inches, somewhere in that range, and maybe 1.5 inches wide. Okay. So it'll be something you'd be able to grip in your hand with gloves and still easily use, but not too big and cumbersome. You wouldn't want to, you know, carry it with you.
And will that, when it's available, I assume later in the year, will that be available worldwide, or is that going to be a U.S. only item?
It will be. It'll be available worldwide. The idea is we love Overland Expo, and this will be our third or fourth one. And so we want to use that opportunity to kind of release it there and kind of offer it up to our overland friends.
Very good, because we have listeners around the world. I know of at least, I think, 4 now in Australia, and then someone just like the show from Venezuela.
Awesome.
Yeah. There's a good number of listeners in the UK. So, and of course, a lot here in the US. But nice to.
We're still searching for that elusive Antarctican listener.
That's right.
Because then we'll have all 7 continents.
And so all of your products are currently available around the world, right, from your website, which is griffinpockettool.com.
That's correct. Yep.
Yes.
Yep. We have them on there on Amazon and a few other marketplaces, but mostly through our website.
Yep. I assume you probably get a little better cut from your own website.
Oh yeah, absolutely. So
yes. Oh, you have a spinner tool. Look at that. You got a little fidget spinner.
Oh yeah, we went there. That's actually more of a conversation piece than anything, really.
I suspect.
It started as a napkin drawing one special evening, and a friend of ours who manufactures our tools for us showed up to Blade Show. I don't know if you guys are familiar with that. That's in Atlanta every year. It's a pretty big knife and blade show. It's a titanium spinner. And it opens your beer bottles. So
it looks like it'll open 3 beer bottles at one time.
It does. And if you are the first person to do that, I'll send you another one.
Do the beer bottles have to be spinning at the time?
Maybe. I don't know. That would be extra points if we could make that happen. I would love to see that.
I think that'd be interesting to try. Yeah.
There's a special prize for anybody that does that.
Okay.
How much is the prize?
Oh, that's hard to tell. It depends on the video quality.
Because if it's anything like the X Prize, we'll get on it.
It could be. It may be buried somewhere out here in this country. You have to go find it. I have to draw a map out now.
Uh-oh.
Thanks very much, Casey, for coming on the show and talking to us about the Griffin Pocket Tool and, of course, about the Georgia Bushcraft. Where can folks find you to get more information?
So you can find us on Facebook and Instagram on both the accounts. But GeorgiaBushcraft.com and GriffinPocketTool.com.
Actually, before you go, we didn't cover this.
Yeah.
What are you driving?
Oh, so I don't know if it's allowed to be said on this Centresteer podcast, but I'm all American-ish right now, driving a F-150, rocking it out with my V8, which is great for pulling my little adventure trailer.
Nice. What year?
I've got an 87 XJ that is all pimped out and only good for the farm.
Wrong kind of XJ, unfortunately.
Yeah, sorry, no
not
Jaguar.
The original. Not the original XJ.
No, the Cherokee. It is. That's my farm beater. It's not allowed to go on the road because I'm afraid I'll die.
What's under the hood? The 4.0?
Yeah, 4.0.
It's got good engine.
Oh, it's great. It's got a pretty nice suspension on it too. Rubicon Express, long arms, 35s, and ready to roll over.
So you've upgraded it to where it's about equal with a stock Land Rover.
Pretty much. I don't know. I would feel safer in the Land Rover, to be honest. Convince you guys to come down and hang out with us this March. We could do some driving around.
Very possible. Very possible. See how things go in the world.
We could go down there. We could do an on-site
podcast.
Yes.
Hey, that would be awesome. You can catch a ride. Mike Henniger, he's coming down.
Oh, yeah.
Just hop up in the truck or the LT Wright van or whatever they're bringing, and it'll be a party. But,
all right. Thanks very much, Casey. We really appreciate it. Thanks for giving us your time.
Absolutely, guys. Thank you so much for having me. And if any of your listeners are interested in any of our products or attending our event, if you use Centresteer on our website, GriffinPocketTool.com, you'll get 20% off. And the same goes 10% off for any of our campouts or events on GeorgiaBushcraft.com.
Sweet. Well, thanks very much. Appreciate that. That's very cool. And that is in the British spelling, by the way. Let's be clear, because we spell it Centre.
As it should be.
As it should be.
Well, hey, I really appreciate that discount and that discount's available worldwide, correct? For any of our listeners anywhere on the planet.
Yep, sure is.
Okay, good deal. Wonderful. Thanks again, Casey.
Very nice.
Absolutely. Thank you, guys. Thanks for getting us out there on the podcast.
Okay.
Excellent. Thank you.
And that's a wrap for the 58th edition of the Centresteer podcast. I want to thank Morgan and thank Mike and thank Harold for coming on the show today and helping out. Appreciate it, guys.
No problem.
Not a problem.
And I want to
happy to do so.
And also thank Nigel and Casey for joining us on the show. Nigel Cass is a race car driver. I always want to say it that way. But he's reviewing the Discovery.
But not a Scotsman.
No, he's not. But I always think in my head, I always think of what was the Scotsman's name?
Jackie Stewart.
Jackie Stewart. Yes, I always think of race car driver.
The wee Scot. Not to be confused with the flying Scot, Jim Clark.
It's a great day for a motor race.
That's it. Thank you.
Oh, yeah.
That's exactly
it.
And thanks to Casey for coming on. And don't forget, you can get a discount for the Griffin Pocket Tool and also for the Bushcraft Georgia Bushcraft event. Use Centresteer as your code for those, and those tools are available anybody in the world. And I know we've got listeners in Australia. Come on, you guys can buy a Griffin Pocket Tool. You'll be the only one in Australia who has that, right?
Thanks, guys.
Mm-hmm, absolutely.
No, there's a handful of you out there.
Oh, good. Oh, that's good to know. That's good to know. Maybe we need to get some on other continents then. Yes.
Absolutely.
And also thanks to the One True Pax for his continued production support. And I think it's still making us sound better than we probably really do.
Perhaps better we deserve to sound.
And also, we forgot about this, but we were reminded with Nigel's discussion of the Discovery. There is a used Land Rover Discovery buying guide. This is only for Disco 3 or the Mark III, 2004 through 2009 in the UK. So the third generation Land Rover Discovery was a huge step forward in 2003 and now makes a fantastic used buy if you choose carefully. So there's a nice article. We'll have a link in the show notes, of course, on what to look for for and not look for when you're buying a Disco 3. And if you're doing that here in the U.S., the LR3, I think some of that stuff would apply, of course, to what to look for and not look for in that. But it's a nice little guide that's out there because they're starting to finally get into, I think, a price that is affordable.
Yeah, we just need them to drop in prices a little bit more so we can buy them and tear them up.
Yes. Although my understanding is, at least for the U.S., avoid the 05, the very first one, because that was apparently had a lot of issues that took them until they got to the 06 to work out.
Well, and we're also missing out on the diesel options.
And we also have an event coming up in Maine. The Maine Winter Romp is coming up in February. Logistically, we were not able to get anybody to come on and talk about it before the show, but we wanted to remind you that it's coming up and it's out there, and maybe we can encourage Morgan to go.
I would love to go up there. And in fact, anybody who does want to go up there, you've got to get your registration in pretty quick. Pre-registration is due by February 5th. So we're recording a little before the beginning of February. I don't know when this episode is going to go live, but you've got a very short period of time to register. The event is February 16th to 19th in the Benton, Maine area. Bruce Fowler hosts that. There's some hotel options because obviously it's February in Maine. He also offers for the daring. You can camp on his site.
You use Casey's skills to do that.
Right, exactly.
Casey, that's what you should do. You should go up to the Maine Winter Romp, and you can then give everybody some free instruction on camping in the wintertime.
Get up there and start some fires.
Yeah. For Land Rovers, it is a free event. Basically, you pay by eating your meals and shopping around the Benton, Maine area. I think it's about 6 to 8 meals, depending on how much of the weekend you attend. And I think this year may be the first year he is accepting non-Land Rover vehicles for a $100 donation to Habitat for Humanity. That is an option. I could sneak in with my 93 Nissan Pathfinder. I'm just not sure if I can squeeze that into my schedule. So I hope somebody else will go, and if you do, report back. Let us know how it was.
Actually, if someone does want to go and you want to be a field reporter for us, let us know. We'll maybe set something up ahead of time, and that'd be kind of cool. Actually, Bruce and I are now friends on Facebook, and we should get him on the show.
Yeah, absolutely. And I had a nice conversation with him at Vermont Overland Rally this year. So he's a great guy, definitely worth going up and visiting and chatting with. I would love to sit down with him for an interview.
Visit our website, Centresteer.com, to listen to previous shows and for show notes, which have links to stories discussed in today's show. We're part of the 4x4 Radio Network, and I invite you to check out the other 4x4 related shows at 4x4 or radionetwork.com. You can connect with us on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. You can directly support the show at patreon.com/Centresteer. If you're not a subscriber to the show, please do so you can get the show automatically. And if you're out there subscribing, don't forget to subscribe to the Green Oval podcast while you're at it. It is not the Green Oval Poocast, though. Thanks, Mike. We're coming up on show number 60, our 5th year. And we're asking you to complete our listener survey. I mentioned this last month. The link is available on our website, and we're going to tweet it out after we record, but before the show gets posted. And we'll tweet that out so you'll check your tweets, check your Facebooks. The survey is for our use only. We're not going to sell or share any other information outside of the show hosts. And also, send us some good thoughts. We're working on a cool guest or two for show number 60, and it's not Jerry McGovern or Richard Hammond, though. But it is still cool guest nonetheless, don't you think, Harold? Harold and I had this.
I think it's very cool.
I think it would be actually probably better than McGovern, but not as good as Hammond, I think.
Jeremy Clarkson?
No, he's a Range Rover guy, and he's in a different class. Thanks for listening to show number 58. I hope you enjoyed it. We'd love to hear from you and what you're up to in your Land Rover. Until next time, I ask you to share the show with one other Land Rover enthusiast. Wave as we pass by.
You have to go find it. I have to draw a map out now.
You guys good?
Yep.
Good.
Yep.
Fantastic.
We did all the things we needed to do, and everybody's happy.
Absolutely.
Wow. Actually, you brought this in at 3 hours, which was the plan. That was surprising.
Wow.
Usually our episodes are 3 hours post edit.
Yes, they have been lately. Yes.